I found an old microphone in a box, so hopefully this video doesn't sound like I'm talking under fucking water. Whenever I pick a cartridge for a particular type of hunt, I always go through the pros and cons of all the cartridges in that sort of area. And today, as you can tell from the title of the video, we're going to be comparing 223, 22-250 and 243 Winchester. So when I'm picking a cartridge, I always have a goal in mind. So for this, obviously this is a fox hunting rifle. If my goal was to have the most cost-effective round, I would probably go with the 223. And if my goal was to have a gun that I could both do, foxes, potentially wild dogs if I was in an area where I could do that, but also do some of the species of deer, maybe I would go a 243. Some of you who are subscribed to this channel will know which one of these three that I've picked for my fox hunting rifle. But what I want to do is I want to take you on the journey of how I got to that decision, comparing these three very popular cartridges together. So along the bottom here, I have what we're going through. So we have the cartridge, we have which bullet we're firing, its ballistics coefficient, the muzzle velocity of that round, the foot-pounds of energy of that round at the muzzle. We have the drop in inches at 300 meters, and then we have our maximum point-blank range for a target of 4 inches. So, about yay being the vitals of a fox. We then have our average maximum point-blank range, because we do, as you'll see in a minute, we're doing maximum point-blank range for each bullet that we're firing, and then all of that average together will give us an average maximum point-blank range, and then our projected barrel life. I thought I'd throw that one in there because a lot of people talk about barrel burners and they really think it's this. It's more of an issue than it actually is. So we're going to throw barrel life in there as well. So the first one we'll go through is the 223 Remington. So we have a few bullets here, and these were the same bullets between the 223 Remington and the 22-250, being that they both fire a .224 projectile. So pick the same ones for them. Once we go to our 243, we obviously have different bullets because we're using a 6mm projectile, but I went with the lightest ones I could get for that. So we have a 35 grain NTX, we have a 40 grain VMAX, a 45 grain Hornet, a 50 grain VMAX, and a 55 grain VMAX. Now you might wonder why there's so many VMAXs on there. That's the bullet that I really wanted to be able to push. I was really going for either the 40 or the 50 grain VMAX. I wanted a light pill because I wanted to be able to push it super fast to get the longest maximum point blank range. That's my whole goal with this gun. I probably should have stipulated at the start. The goal I'm after for this fox hunting rifle is to be able to hold the crosshairs on the target and shoot and get that bullet within that 4-inch vital zone out to the longest range I can without having to do any elevation adjustments. So I won't go through all of the data together. If you really want, you can pause the video and you can really rip down into that data, or you can join Patreon and you can get all this data straight off there. But as you can see, our average maximum point blank range is 263.8 meters. So that's actually a fair distance for such a small cartridge. You're getting a fair whack out of it. So 260 meters holding on and you're going to hit a fox. So that is pretty good. However, some of the places I hunt foxes, you need to be able to take very long shots. So the longer you can get it, the better. It just saves you time before you have to start LRFing the target or range estimating, because a lot of us don't have LRFs because we're not that rich. And barrel life for a 223 is roughly around 4,200 rounds. Now, when we're talking about barrel life, it's not like you hit 4,200 rounds and the gun stops shooting. Barrel life for me is more in the context of bench rest shooters or PRS shooters, where you might go from at 100 meters, you might have a ½ inch or a 3/4 of an inch group, and once the barrel is shot out, now it's hitting maybe an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter, inch and a half. So it's not like a super, like your gun's just wrecked. and you need to get rid of it, it just means you're going to lose a bit of accuracy. When we talk about barrel burning rounds, it's obviously if the carcase is big and the pill is small, it's going to have more pressure going through the throat of the rifle or throat of the barrel. But that's also compounded by if you're firing long strings of fire. So bench rest shooters, you might be doing a competition where you're firing 20 rounds in a row and your barrel's super hot. That's going to burn your barrel out faster than if you were using the same overbore cartridge and firing one round on a cold bore and then an hour later firing another round because you found another fox. So don't get too wrapped up around the axles about barrel burning and barrel life. But we've got it in here anyway, so we're going to go on with it. 22-250, this one kind of surprised me because we're going up quite a ways here. So for instance, our 35 grain NTX, so for a 2-3 Remington it was going 3,800 feet per second, which is hooking, absolutely hooking. But with a 35 grain NTX and a 22-250, that's going 4,400 feet per second. That is absolutely ridiculous. And this is only the load data that's pulled out of the Hornady manual. You could probably go faster than that if you hand loaded. So that is absolutely fucking insane. So that gives you 1,500 foot-pounds of energy, whereas that same bullet going 600 feet per second slower in the 223 is giving you 1,100. So that's something to think about there. 1,500 foot-pounds of energy is actually what they recommend for elk in America, just FYI. So that's about 2,000 joules-ish. That's quite hefty. That means that you could technically, by the standard, you could shoot an elk with a 35 grain projectile out of a 22-250. Would you? Fucking no. Could you? Yes. So all of this together, this gives us an average maximum point blank range of 290 meters. That's pretty good. So practically 300 meters, hold on, you're going to hit. I like that quite a bit. And 22-250, a lot of people say 22-250 is a bit of a barrel burn. It's not really that bad. It's not as bad as you think it is. It's definitely not as bad as 220 Swift, and it's nowhere near as bad as 243. There's a lot more 22 caliber barrel burners out there than that one. Barrel life on that is 3,000 rounds, so that's still pretty good. I'm never going to fire 3,000 rounds out of my 22-250. Even if I do load develop every single year and hunt with it every single year, I still won't be able to do that in the amount of time that I will be alive on this planet. So, not really a concern for me. If you did burn it out though, a barrel is a consumable item on a rifle. A lot of people forget that. You can just get them changed out. It's a thing. If you throw the rifle away, just change the barrel. It's all good. Moving on to 243. Now you can see that I've changed the bullets here. We're starting at a 55 grain Nosler boat tail, and we're going up to a 58 grain VMAX, a 60 grain Sierra Hollow Point, a 65 grain VMAX, and a 75 grain VMAX. Obviously, it has a hell of a lot more powder in there, but we're not getting super great velocity. So if we go a 55 grain 22-250 is going 3,600 feet per second, where out of all of that extra powder in a 243, we're only getting 400 feet per second faster. That is still very quick. 4,000 feet per second for a 55 grain projectile is ridiculous, but yeah, it is what it is. That's added nearly 400 foot-pounds of energy to it, and our drop is about 2 inches less at 300 meters. So overall, the 243 gives us an average maximum point blank range of 284 meters. So it's averaging less than the 22-250 purely because we have a lot of heavier bullets in the 6mm range, or the .243 range, and that would be the reason behind that. Barrel life average on a 243 Winchester is 2,500 rounds. Once again, you probably will take you a fucking very long time to burn that out. So don't worry about barrel burnout. It's not a big deal. It's like murders. They don't happen very often, and you're probably not going to get murdered. So barrel burn, it doesn't happen that often, and you're probably not going to burn your barrel out, particularly if you're hunting. So this is the data that I did up. I sat down, I did all these calculations, and I made this table, and then I went out to decide which one of these cartridges meets the criteria of what I set out to achieve. Now, I wanted a fox hunting cartridge, and I've got 3 fox hunting cartridges here. I wanted a round that was going to give us the longest maximum point blank range. It was going to use the least amount of powder I could to achieve that, and a round that wasn't going to stupidly burn out my barrel or, you know, be stupidly overbore. So I settled then on the 22-250. For me, it feels like the best balance between the heavier end of the 243, where you are going to be a bit more barrel burny and that, but you know, then you're pushing heavier bullets, which was then going to impact the how far you could push those rounds for your maximum point blank range. And then the 223 being light, fuck all recoil. I feel it lacks a little bit in the range it can give you unless you're, you know, LRFing and dialing. Obviously, you still have a perfect amount of energy to kill a fox way out to probably 800 or 900 meters, but I don't have the scope or an LRF to be able to shoot that far anyway. And a lot of the time, I don't really have time to be LRFing and dialing. Although I would like to get into shooting this a little bit further, so on my 2250 I will be upgrading the scope at some point. That's another video for another time. So I hope you got something out of that. If you are picking between those 3, you should probably pick the 22-250. If you're not, tell me why you're not picking 22-250, because I'd love to hear your opinion on which one of these 3 is the best fox hunting cartridge. I hope you got something out of that, and I will see you next video. Hooroo.